Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have an introduction of a late item, Ms. Gurry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The late items for this afternoon, Part 1 is the addition of a Community Charter Section 90, subsection 1, subsection E, for the purposes of going in camera.
Thank you very much. I would ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera now. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the December 20th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. As the province is now in Phase 3 of the opening plan, question period has been reinstated for those in attendance for agenda items only. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. At the start of question period, I will call those up who have signed up to the podium to address Council. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Agenda item 8A, presentations, adding a presentation from Kevin Griffith, Unitarian and St. Peter's Extreme Weather Shelters. And we're also adding agenda item 15A, request from Councillor Thorpe regarding Local Government Leadership Academy training. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. A motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have no minutes to adopt. On to the Mayor's report. Obviously, this week has brought some changes around COVID restrictions in the province, and so I point out what would normally be a happy agenda for Parks, Recreation and Culture and the Christmas spirit with some trepidation as things may well change. Initially, though, I could say that the Frosty Bucket Search is back from December 18th to 29th with daily clues revealing a park or a trail where a sticker can be found. Scan the sticker, reveal a word that would make up a 12-word phrase, and submissions can be entered in to win a Parks, Recreation and Culture prize back. There's nothing like going to the city website once in a while. Winter Wonderland takes place at the Frank Crane Arena on December 24th and again on December 26th to 30th. It offers a variety of skating sessions for only $1 admission, with some being free. And at this point, we believe that is going ahead. And then the first annual New Year's Day event, Activate, will take place on January the 1st, 12 to 5 at Bevan Park. Tickets are $10 each, or $35 for 5, and are available for purchase on the day of the event or in advance at Bevan Park Pool Office. But I would ask anyone who's listening tonight to please pay attention to the news, which is changing fairly rapidly. On that, this is the last council meeting of 2021, and I just want to take a moment, if I may, to firstly thank this council for the respectful way in which it's carried on the people's business. I want to thank the staff, everyone who works for the City of Nanaimo, and contributes to ensuring that public services are delivered throughout this city, regardless of weather or COVID or criticism or even occasionally compliments. I think we're very fortunate in this town to have such a dedicated public service working for all of us. On a human level, I want to say I gave up some time ago talking about COVID during the Mayor's address because, well, restrictions were loosening and we thought that we were probably going to see the end of this and that maybe Christmas of 2021 would look like the Christmases we remember. That is not the case. It's not nearly as restrictive as it was last year. But nevertheless, at a time of the year that people have so looked forward to in many cases, these are challenging times. There's no question about it. I jokingly say to people, it ain't Syria. No one's barrel bombing us. Let's put this in perspective. There are many in our community, more than there should be, who are homeless and hungry and starving and without much hope, and we need to turn our minds to those people. We're going to have a presentation from Loaves and Fishes later tonight. I single them out along with the Salvation Army and other organizations who are working hard to provide some comfort to our most vulnerable citizens, and I encourage all of you to do so. For many others, we live in a fair degree of comfort, but no question a certain level of frustration as we don't see the end of the pandemic coming. Whether it's restrictions in the kind of family gatherings we'd love to have, or with friends or with family, or sporting events if you're a sports fan. God help you if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan in the last week. It gets pretty frustrating. And I can sense and see sometimes in the public, I will call it a lack of tolerance. And we need to step back and remember, particularly at this time of year, that yes, we may be feeling bad, and yes, we may think our lives are grim and restricted, and we have reason to be a bit short-tempered or a bit cranky or not as tolerant as we could and should be. But just remember, there is always someone else, people you may not know, who are near you or close to you even, who are suffering in ways that you don't understand or know. So if this is the Mayor's Christmas message, it is simply this. Truly, as Bonnie Henry has said over and over again, be kind to one another. Try and take that extra step of tolerance as you deal with people in your daily life. This is going to be with us for a while longer. And sometimes it's hard when the reservoir of your patience and humanity is a little dry, empty indeed in some cases, but we have to do our best. I am confident that all of you will do that over the coming weeks as we work through this next phase of the pandemic, and hopefully look forward to potentially a spring or a summer where we'll all be a lot happier and feel a lot better about everything in our lives. In the meantime, on behalf of Council, for all of those of you who are listening, I hope you indeed have a very Merry Christmas, as merry a Christmas as is possible. And remember to give generously. My standard line at the Salvation Army kickoff luncheons, which haven't occurred for the last couple of years, is to remember the biblical line about it being easier for the camel to go through the eye of the needle than the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So think accordingly, because none of us know when we're leaving, and so it might be nice to think that you left having been more generous than you might otherwise have been. And so, Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. We have nothing to rise and report, Ms. Gurry. We have two presentations. The first is Ms. Pat Miller, Executive Director of the BC Chapter, Public Works Association of BC, the Most Creative Entry Award. And Mr. Sims, congratulations, you're going to introduce Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a great pleasure to be in front of you this evening, especially on a rather auspicious note. Ms. Miller represents the BC Public Works Association, and on behalf of the Canadian Public Works Association, she's presenting yourself and Mr. Rudolph an award. She has a few words that I'll ask her to step to the podium to share. And she's currently the Executive Director with BC Public Works Chapter.
Ms. Miller, good evening and welcome. Nice to see you, and thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening, Mayor Crow, council members, Mr. Thompson, and any public works staff that may be watching. As mentioned, I am Pat Miller, the Executive Director for the Public Works Association of BC, and it's a real privilege to be here to present the National Public Works Week Award to the City of Nanaimo in recognition of its 2021 National Public Works Week celebration and educational events. Each year in May, National Public Works Week recognizes the tens of thousands of men and women in North America who provide and maintain infrastructure and services collectively known as public works. Municipalities throughout North America celebrate National Public Works Week with project and facility tours, school visits, community education, career events, competitions, and social activities. Municipalities also use the week to recognize their staff, the men and women who play such an important role in their community's vitality. And this year, many municipalities were challenged to reimagine their community outreach and public education activities. Canadian Public Works Association awards honor these efforts to promote National Public Works Week, one of the best ways to increase public awareness about the importance of public works and the service public works provides to our communities. Nanaimo competed with other Canadian municipalities for the most creative entry. Staff developed education video for students in grades 4 and 5 that provided insights into daily operation and activity of public works staff, and worked with school district to ensure linkage to the school's curriculum. the key to develop their interest for future careers in public works really helps. Some of the topics included fleet operations, sanitation, water supply and distribution, drainage, roads, traffic administration, and sewers were all linked to themes of individual and social responsibilities, as well as different levels of government and environmental protection. A word scramble based on the water cycle, crossword puzzle based on key concepts presented in the video, a t-shirt art contest that's the submission template accompanied the video, which was distributed to different district schools. The image from the winning art submission will be transferred onto t-shirts to be worn by staff at Nanaimo's 2022 Public Works Day. CPWA is honored to recognize Nanaimo's National Public Works Week effort, and public works services personnel and our infrastructure assets are an essential part of our community that don't always enjoy a high level of public awareness. National Public Works Week programs and events like Nanaimo's go a long way to provide the awareness, and I commend all public works staff who have made this special week and celebration a success. Mayor Krog, I'm pleased to present you with this CPWA National Public Works Week Award, recognizing the City of Nanaimo and its commitment and dedicated public works staff. And I also want to recognize all of the volunteers who really made Nanaimo's National Public Works Week a success. Many congratulations on your efforts.
Ms. Miller, thank you very much. Before we step forward for the inevitable photo op, I just want to say that the city, its staff, Public Works in particular, obviously very honored by this, and so should the citizens of Nanaimo be honored by this. It reflects outstanding work, so thank you.
Yeah.
The next item is Kevin Griffith, United and St. Peter's Extreme Weather Shelters. I'm going to call you Kevin just once, and then refer to you respectfully as Mr. Griffith. I didn't recognize you tonight with that, without the facial hair and, of course, a mask on.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. I just wanted to come here and I've decided this year, as I'm 65 in about a month, that I'm going to call it quits at the Unitarian Shelter. So as of today, that's the truth. I will continue at St. Peter's till the end of the year. But I just wanted to say thank you. 16 years ago, I, like so many others, was struggling on the street. And life changed for me. I worked really hard and the doors opened. And there I was, 49 years old. What am I going to do? I'd like to say I found the work, but the work found me. Somebody said to me, "We think you'd be good at this." And that was 15 and a half years ago. And I said, "I'm not sure, but I'll give it a try." And I guess I was okay at it because I'm still at it. But I wanted to thank the city for the honor of serving the people I've served for the last 15 years. I had to decide what kind of a man I wanted to become when I sobered up. And I think I did a good job with the help of people around me, people in this city, business owners, politicians, Yes, I rubbed a few the wrong way, more than a few. But when I needed something for the shelter, I shook that tree really hard until whatever I needed fell out. So I'm sure someone will be there to take my place. I just wanted to say thank you. It's been, what a ride. That's all I can say. If you had told me this was my life 16 years ago, I would have told you were crazy. I wouldn't change a thing in my life today. I wouldn't change a thing. So thank you. I'll continue with St. Peter's for this year, and then I'll be gardening and fishing, so enjoying life. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith, and if I may say something, well, I'll let Councillor Thorpe go first. He's on the list. He's very quick, our Councillor Thorpe.
Well, I wanted to be quick because I knew that you would want to comment as well, Your Worship, and I hate following you when you speak. But very briefly, I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Griffith, and you've come here thanking us. It's us that needs to be thanking you. Thanking you for your excellent work over these past years. And many in our community might not be aware of what you have done and how you have done it. But in my opinion, the Unitarian Shelter has been an absolute gold standard of how shelters should be run. And that's down to you and your leadership. So you will certainly be missed, and I know that you'll stay somewhat active in the community. But I just wanted to personally say I deeply respect you and your work, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
If I were a less verbose individual, I'd probably just say I agree with Councillor Thorpe and shut up, but I can't resist. It's fairly well known that, as Mr. Griffith has pointed out, he's faced his own challenge in his life and overcome them. And he has done so with courage and support that he acknowledges, which is always important. None of us achieve anything in life entirely on our own. We all have others that we rely on, and he's respectful of that. What Councillor Thorpe has said about his leadership and the example he has set is absolutely true. And at a time when people are feeling perhaps a little less optimistic about the future than they were a few months ago, as I mentioned in my mayor's address earlier, people like you and the strength you've shown provide a source of optimism that we all need. And particularly for those who are literally living in the streets of our city and in other communities across this country, that there is always hope. There are good people willing to do the work. Let us not pretend for a moment that dealing with people who often have mental health issues, addiction issues, personality disorder, brain injury, who are filled with woe and tragedy, for whom every day is a struggle and misery, being able to work with those people is no easy task. It requires, to some extent, what we think of historically as a sort of sainthood. Now, I'm not saying you're a saint, Mr. Griffith, and we all come with a certain amount of sin. But in as much as one can do what is right and do the Lord's work, to use an old phrase, you have done so. So on behalf of this community and this council, very kind of you to come here tonight and say thank you. But more importantly, on behalf of the community, thank you. Committee minutes, only for receipt, no motion required. Motion for adoption of the consent items, moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Sorry, but it's a fairly long agenda of consent items to get to the next page. We have now delegations unrelated to agenda items, and we have, it's Keeley, I assume, correct? Not Kelly? Keeley Freeman, rebuilding permit processing times for nonprofit organizations and essential services, bracket daycares. Please come on down, and you'll have 5 minutes, and when you get to a minute, if you're still talking, I'll give you a little signal. Welcome, and please take your mask off. For us deaf old guys, it's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilor members, and staff. So my name is Keely Freeman, and I live downtown in Nanaimo on Halliburton Street. I'm the founder and daycare manager of Nanaimo Innovation Academy, a nonprofit daycare on Hecate Street providing care and services for over 45 families. I come here tonight to talk a bit about Christmas miracles. Okay, I'm come tonight to talk about building permits, actually. Building permit processing timelines, which is absolutely not my expertise. But here's a quick list of things that I do know, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So processing a building permit is complicated, and it takes a person with specialized training. The city has been actively looking to hire more people with specialized training. The city has had not much success in that. People are realizing that Nanaimo is an awesome place to live and want to move here. Developers are realizing property is still relatively cheap and want to build here. More building permit applications than ever before are being submitted, and processing is backlogged, now taking over 8 months to get a commercial building permit. Many people and organizations are frustrated by this and potentially are complaining. The city did a special analysis of the situation with feedback from an advisory group of selected Nanaimo businesses and received funding to work on solutions based on that analysis. The city has still not been able to hire more people with specialized training, and it is still taking over 8 months to get a commercial building permit. Here's another thing that I know. There is a huge crisis in childcare in Nanaimo. There's massive shortages of spaces. Wait lists are out of control. Many people, mostly women, can't go back to work and have to stay home until they can find childcare. People are desperate and resorting to poor quality or unlicensed care. And many daycares in Nanaimo are closing, largely due to political reasons or staffing or funding issues. There's some new ones that are opening, but not at the rate that meets our current need and the growth of our city. This is something that I know you're all aware of because thanks to the effort of the Mid-Island Region Child Care Action Plan, the document states that in order to meet space targets for Nanaimo, the city will need to have add 3,410 new spaces by 2030. It also stated that 475 are currently in development, most of which were out of school care, and not infant, toddler, or under 5-year-old. So infant toddler spaces are the hardest to create, largely because they have the most building restrictions and licensing restrictions, but they also, you run those programs at a deficit for the most part. Going back to the targeted 3,410 spaces, if we divide that by 8 years, that's roughly over 425 spaces a year, but that does not factor the aforementioned loss of spaces that are rapidly occurring in our sector, and it doesn't factor the rapid growth that Nanaimo is experiencing. So projects like Sandstone and other projects that will attract hundreds of new families take into account an elementary school, but as far as I'm aware, not daycares. More than ever, it's apparent that child care is an essential service. Thanks to our services, families are able to work at the City of Nanaimo or Nanaimo Public Library, School District 68, VIU, nonprofit organizations, and many, many more local businesses in our community. Childcare needs and other such essential services in our community must be addressed and supported by the city in real and tangible ways, and shortening building permit processing times is one way to do that. In a recent letter to me from Patrick Thomas, Director of Governance Services with the BC government, he states that municipalities have the authority to establish permitting systems under Section 15 of the Community Charter to provide for them granting or refusal of licensing, permits, and approval. He also states that efficient and effective development approval processes are critical to building the infrastructure and amenities, such as childcare facilities, that communities need. And we all agree that the current processes at many levels can be complex and slow. That is why in 2018, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs initiated the Development Approval Process Review.
1 minute, Ms. Freeman.
Thank you. To address challenges and identify opportunities for improvements in development approval processes and support local governments in removing barriers to affordable housing and essential infrastructure projects. I'm officially requesting that our essential project be put in a high priority stream so that we don't have to wait over 8 months to start this build. I know that there's other daycares in this that are waiting for building permits as well, but I know that I'm just concentrating on us, but I think that it's a reflective of essential services in general. You're in a position to change the current system to create more efficient and effective ways of moving forward for much needed essential services in our community. Many current Nanaimo families will be impacted by this. In order to service my current and future families, I humbly make this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You're as close on 5 minutes as anyone's come in a long time.
I timed it perfectly.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. And I think we all agree childcare is an essential service. And I don't think we're the only community that struggles with this. But I'm wanting to understand specifically, are you talking of new build permits or renovating so it's appropriate for childcare?
I think both. So both. I know that for my specific circumstances, it's a new build. It's actually a zone for residential, but because of the complexities of adding an infant toddler classroom to that, it had to be upgraded to a commercial zoning. So even though it's a residential zoning and a residential building, the intricacies of the workings of a residential daycare for an infant toddler program needs to be upgraded to commercial.
So that's one example. Are there other examples like that you know of that is holding back, like somebody just renovating the house to be appropriate?
So I know of another daycare that is waiting on a building permit to add a wall. And it would be a wall to blockade an area, which then will enable her to have an infant toddler program in that sector. And that's been over a year process so far and still with no building permit.
Over a year.
I think that even just finding an architect takes like about 6 to 8 months. And then once you get the architect, you need to have, there's obviously, I don't need to.
So there's a number
many
of
different processes that take time. But I think that one way that the city can support the creation of new spaces is to shorten the processing time of building permit applications, because that's something that you have control over.
And it's specific for childcare.
Or other essential services that need it, that depending on the growth of this community, and you would know best. I only know the childcare sector, but yeah, I can.
I know, and I know that the staff, we're all working on the building permits, both here and at the RDN, the regional district. So that's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, thank you for the presentation. And yeah, this is important that we get this right. And I just had a question to staff. I think we recently are, and it may not be in time to affect you, but we are reforming and looking at making adjustments in our building permit process. And I think there's going to be a separate track, if I'm not correct, for commercial improvements and things like that. Can you speak to that, Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Councillor Gesselbrock and the delegation did a good job of outlining the steps that Council's been supportive of a building permit function review, we've called it. So we've done that work. A number of recommendations coming out of that. One of those is establishing a third stream in the building department, which our intent is to fast track some of the smaller renovation commercial permits, significantly reducing their time, but also freeing up time for the commercial plan checkers who work on larger new projects and new buildings, all with the intent of kind of managing with the resources we have to hopefully see reduction in permitting times. That's just one area that Council's been supportive. Additional staffing, Council's been supportive of, and yes, people are very difficult to find, but I'm happy to say that as of today, we have only one vacant position in the building department, which is any vacancy is not great, but for us, that's pretty good compared to where we've been the last few months. So if everything stays as it is and we're able to fill that position, we'll hopefully be fully staffed in the near future. A number of initiatives, as you Council's aware, we've gone out and secured grant funding to do further work on software upgrades, internal process reviews. We have a working group established between staff and the development community that are looking at specifically the fast track permit process that you've identified, and also looking at a pilot program for complex buildings. So looking at a way to try to expedite those complex buildings. So a number of things going on a number of fronts, and Mr. Holm will be back, scheduled to be back in front of you early in the new year with kind of an update on that process and how things are going on that front.
Great, thank you. And just to add, over the last 5 years, I've the walk down the railroad tracks and have seen the improvements and changes to your childcare facility there, and there's that report that we did do on the need for way more spaces in town. It was quite striking, and it's something that does affect our economic development and the well-being of kids here. So it's an important thing. So thank you for advocating on that.
And Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you are doing and the patience that you have to get to where you are now, and I appreciate it. I don't have any questions of the delegation other than thank you for the work you're doing. I do have a question of staff, though.
Your Worship, if there is no other questions for the delegation.
I was going to say, Ms. Freeman, you're free to sit down now. Thank you for coming tonight. Merry Christmas. Councillor Bonner, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a city, are we allowed to specifically bump certain types of projects to the front of the queue? I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just wondering, like, technically, are we allowed to say, if we make a decision that childcare permits, anything to do with childcare, automatically get bumped to the head of the queue? Are we allowed to do that?
Your Worship, I think council could establish a policy that said these types of projects are a priority. I'll be honest, it often comes up as a carrot when, regardless of the type of development you're talking about. So if we do a review of affordable housing, it's listed as a carrot. If we do a review of green energy, green buildings, it's listed as a carrot, or to incentivize those affordable housing, business investment, all of those things, it's listed as a carrot. So yes, I think council could do it. The challenge always becomes what doesn't make that list, because and I'm not debating at all the very significant need we have in the community for daycare. We know that, but same, we also have that need for affordable housing. We have significant investments at the hospital where those are often requested to be prioritized. School additions, the list is long and varied. New businesses which attract employees. So many sectors that try to make that same argument. So the challenge is always, if you're going to start ranking them, who goes at the bottom? That's been the difficulty when we've had that discussion in the past.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, very similar question, probably the same. During the review, did we ever contemplate prioritizing certain applications? Is that
through Your Worship, Councillor Hemmons? No, that was not specifically part of the review. But what I would say is that many of the daycare applications we see now are often in conversions of existing buildings or renovations to existing buildings. So the intent of the fast track program is to capture those types of programs. Wouldn't be specific to daycare, but it would be specific to those types of businesses that often go in the spaces that were originally built for another purpose and find the need to convert those spaces. So not directly, but indirectly, yes.
So then, just following the application that we just heard a little bit about, a wall to create more spaces, that would go into the fast track program without knowing
and almost anything about it. I would say in principle, yes, that's exactly the type of thing we try to capture in the fast track program. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item, reports, Mayor's Leaders Table, Infrastructure Ask City Projects. Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just really briefly, the staff just felt that it was appropriate to be in front of council and inform, the information report in front of you just lays out a number of the projects that the city's putting forward as part of the Infrastructure Ask Working Group. So the working group is a subset of the Mayor's Leaders Table, which came out of the Mayor's Task Force on Recovery and Resilience. So the working group consists of a variety of community leaders and community organizations, I would say, including VIU, School District 68, the Port Authority, Vancouver Island Health Authority, and a number of cultural organizations. So through the chair, who is Donna Hayes, has asked for submissions from various community groups, And the intent of the working group is really to have a list of projects that show broad community benefit and bring coherence and unity around the concept of what capital projects are important to this community, not just City of Nanaimo projects, not just Vancouver Island Health, but for the entire community. So the intent of the working group is to look at major projects, to break the group down into major projects, minor projects, and some that are still evolving. And I think it's envisioned that Councillor Thorpe, sitting on the working group, is a help and can advocate on behalf of the working group to council, and council in turn can advocate for those projects that the community sees as its priority. So just as in the report, there's a number of city projects representing different facets of the organization. Some of these the community and council is well aware of: the Nanaimo Operations Center, the RCMP renovations, the waterfront walkway, and more recently maybe the older project, the South End Community Center. There's a few others that we tossed into the mix just because they're significant projects that we felt there's benefit for the broader community to be aware of. And these include the Midtown Water Supply project. You'll be seeing a report on that early in the new year. And then also the fiber optic network, a sort of a community-owned fiber optic network that ties into the connected coast. And lastly, the one that the entire committee felt was important was the housing element. So we've submitted a project that reflects the Health and Housing Task Force recommendations, and as a placeholder, and as a capital ask, I guess, for housing. That's really it, Your Worship. It's just information, and if there's projects that council feels is strongly of adding over and above that list, I think the appropriate way to do that would be through Your Worship and to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to, on behalf of the working group, thank Mr. Sims for his really valuable contributions and work with that group. And again, just to reinforce what Mr. Sims said a moment ago, that this is simply a list of what I'll term city-initiated projects that we are putting forward. And it's only one part of the complete list, and we're getting as many other community organizations as possible to put forward their wishes or visions in terms of infrastructure needs. So what the city is putting forward is just one aspect of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item is the lease disposal to Loaves and Fishes Community Food Bank, 1861 East Wellington Road. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to turn the introduction of this report over to Mr. Corson, who himself and his team have been responsible for bringing this forward. So,
thank you very much. Mr. Corson, please.
Great. Good evening, Your Worship. The report before you sets out a request to issue a 30-year lease from the city to Loaves and Fishes for a new food distribution center. Earlier this year in March, Loaves and Fishes approached council requesting financial support to acquire a parcel of land on East Wellington Road, which would house this new 25,000 square foot facility. And council gave staff direction to acquire the property. That property has been purchased, transferred to the city at the end of November. And the next part of this is to enter into a long-term lease so that Loaves and Fishes can continue their fundraising for the building itself. And certainly happy to answer any specifics about the lease you may have, Your Worship. I know Mr. Sinclair is here too to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corson. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just professing some of my ignorance on this. So after the lease is up and it's not renewed, what happens to the building?
Yeah, through Your Worship to Councillor Turley. So under the agreement, there's an option for us to renew the lease. So it's a 30-year lease. At that time, Loaves and Fishes has the opportunity to, and council have an opportunity to renegotiate that lease. So you could wish to, if the building's in good shape, you may wish to grant another 10, 20, 30-year lease. None of us around here will probably be here at that point in time. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now with that.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman? We have a delegation first, Councillor Martman.
Oh, sorry.
I know we're anxious to get to Christmas, but I don't want to deny Peter Sinclair his opportunity to come and address council tonight. Mr. Sinclair, please. You'd introduce yourself and you'll have 5 minutes and I'll give you the minute signal. It's not your first time here. Welcome again.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Peter Sinclair. I'm the Executive Director of Loaves and Fishes Food Bank. I am here to thank the City of Nanaimo for purchasing 1861 East Wellington. And I'm here also to encourage you to approve a 30-year lease for Loaves and Fishes to occupy that land so that we can build a 25,000 square foot warehouse to serve our community. The need for this facility, oops, we're going the wrong way here. The need for this facility has come about because of the amazing results that Loaves and Fishes has been able to achieve through a combination of innovation, hard work, and some risk-taking. And the results have been nothing short of staggering. Last year, to 2020, we accessed and distributed $6.2 million worth of food. So you can see on this graph the growth that we've achieved. Also on that graph, you see the food that we have been able to provide to other nonprofits in our community. Last year, that amounted to $1.7 million worth of food. As we finish up 2021, we anticipate sourcing and distributing over $6.5 million worth of food, with $2 million worth of food going to other agencies in our community. All of this food has created a jam, a completely full 6,000 square foot warehouse. 2 years ago, we recognized this situation was coming, and so we began the process of looking for alternative facilities. This included looking at existing facilities within the community that may work for us. Specifically, we looked at the old Save-On Foods building at Terminal Park Mall, along with the wholesale sports building. In speaking to the landowners, they indicated to us that they had tenants who were willing to move into there and they were not interested in working with us. We also looked at a number of properties throughout Nanaimo, from the south end all the way up to Lantzville. And through that process, we identified 1861 East Wellington as the ideal facility or location for us. Not only is it centrally located, which makes it accessible for people in need, but it is also ideally located for our trucks as they come and go about the city. The other thing that makes this property ideal is it is exactly the size of property we need. When property is being sold for $1 million an acre, you don't want to buy 3 acres when all you need is 1.4 acres, and that's about what this property is. So it ticked all of the boxes, and so in February of this year, we had a contract in place to purchase it, and then in March of this year, I appeared before council requesting your support to purchase this land. Now, over that time, since February, we have been working hard to actually design the facility, and we have been working with Saywell Contracting and have come up with a preliminary design that we will be hopefully applying for a development permit early in the new year. And so what I've got here is the plans as we see them right now. At the right of the screen, you will see the area which will provide a client pickup area. So this will look like a grocery store where people can come and access food. One of the great benefits of this will be that it will give increased hours of operation for people to come pick up food from us. We anticipate it being open at least 5 days a week from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, which will make things a lot easier for people in need. If you look over at the left side of the building, you will see where all the food will come in. It will work from the left side to the right. While food will go out to people on the right side, we will also provide food to other agencies, and that happens in the middle right side of the building. This is the right investment for our community. It's going to provide more food for the most vulnerable citizens in our community. it's going to provide better access to food because food will be available at more times to them. It will enable other nonprofits to do more. As I mentioned, this year Loaves and Fishes provided over $2 million worth of food to these other agencies. We anticipate being able to increase that. When these other agencies pick up food from us, that enables them to do the work that they are doing better at lower cost. So this is an investment not only in Loaves and Fishes, but in the many other nonprofits that Loaves and Fishes serves. Will also help reduce our greenhouse gases emissions. This is something that the RDN has recognized and has provided significant funding towards this initiative. It will also allow us to leverage your investment in us with other levels of government. We are working with the provincial government to seek funding to actually build this facility. And when the City of Nanaimo provides a lease to us, that provides a very strong argument that the provincial government should come on board too and provide significant funding. And yes, Your Worship, we intend to touch base with you for pointers on how that can be done.
That was the 1 minute signal, actually.
Oh, okay. Well,
thank you
heads up,
for
you're going to
the
be getting word from us. And all of this rests on Loaves and Fishes' proven track record. We have shown the community that we can achieve results. And these results have come about in large part because of the significant investments that have been made, not only by the City of Nanaimo, but also by Food Banks BC and the provincial government in specific pieces of infrastructure. And so this slide here shows the dates that we had significant investments in infrastructure made, and you can clearly see that when these investments are made, we achieved dramatic results. So with that, I encourage you to approve a 30-year lease for Loaves and Fishes to lease 1861 East Wellington. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinclair. Councillor Martman?
Only if there's no questions for the delegation.
Questions? We've got Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Sinclair. When you and I talked about this a while ago, there was the conversation a little bit, possibility of putting in a kitchen to do repackaging of food and preparing food that came in bulk and stuff like that. Is that still an option?
Potentially. The issue that we're running into as we design this, and Saywell Contracting is working with the city on this, is just the amount of parking that we need. And as you put a kitchen in, the number of parking spots increase. So it's something we're certainly considering. The other piece that's in the mix of that puzzle is 210 Fry Street, which Loaves and Fishes owns, and that has the potential to provide those services.
And I would strongly suggest that. We were talking about also in terms of if things go, earthquakes, that sort of thing, is to have a commercial kitchen that is in a newly built facility that can withstand an earthquake as being a possible source for emergency services and that sort of thing. So I would strongly I'd be in favor of such thing.
So a new facility would definitely fit that bill better than 210 Fry Street.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general comment. I think at the outset, I think this probably, in my mind, proves Mr. Lindsay's earlier point about prioritizing development permits or building permits, because I can imagine the food bank would be right at the top of the list of the essential services. But do you know what I mean? Like, I can see now how this list can get big. My question for you was actually asked by Councillor Bonner, but I'll ask again and more directly. What happens to Fry Street in this scenario?
There's a number of options that we'd consider. We wouldn't make a final decision on that until we are fully moved in to the new facility. Those options include selling it. I mean, there's tremendous value there. There's also the option to retain that and use it for warehousing services, potentially for us, but then also potentially using it as a revenue stream as we provide warehousing services to other organizations. I also mentioned to Councillor Bonner, it could be used to put a kitchen in there. So there are a number of options that we would consider, none of which have been fully explored, and we'd certainly, make a decision once we are into the new facility.
Okay, thank you. And one more, if I may, and that's just the general sense from your perspective of the need for the food bank. Is the demand growing? I know in COVID it dipped. Do you have any kind of current figures?
We do. So if we look at our Christmas hampers for this year, we're looking at being up about 20% from last year. But the thing to keep in perspective is we have seen a steady decline since about 2017 in terms of the number of people accessing Christmas hampers. So we're up from last year, but we're not up to where we would have been in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a number of reasons that I could get into, but I won't because of time. But there is significant need for the services of Loaves and Fishes. In any given month, we're helping between 2,000 and 2,500 different people here in Nanaimo.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Turley, and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to you to Mr. Sinclair, thank you for coming this evening and for your work over many years. This is what I would term a huge investment, or potentially, by the city in one organization. And I'll be honest with you, that gave me cause to hesitate. But I have been won over simply, and it didn't take a lot, but by the obvious benefit that Loaves and Fishes brings to our community and in fact the entire Central Island area. So I will be supportive, absolutely. I do have a question though, and I think it's more for our viewers to be clear that the city's commitment is in terms of the land.
Yes.
And there is a clause in the lease agreement that Loaves and Fishes would be responsible for beginning construction of the actual building.
Yes.
Within 5 years, I believe.
Yes, it does list out specific timelines for applying for permits and then also completion. And city staff could probably speak more directly.
No, that's fine. So I just want to make it clear that we're talking about the land.
Yes.
The actual building is going to be basically your responsibility. And, yes. And my question related to that is, do you have plans for a concerted and aggressive fundraising campaign with other levels of government and the general public?
Yes.
Good.
This is, we are at the stage where we are coming up with the budget, so that preliminary design that I've shown you, we've given to architects who are now working with the City of Nanaimo planning to come up with, okay, this is what we want to build. At that point, we can budget it out, and then we're able to start that campaign. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say, oh, I think we need 5 million. No, it's 10 million to build this. We want to make sure that we have a educated budget before we do that, but I can assure you we will have a very aggressive fundraising campaign with various levels of government to ensure this facility is built.
Good. We'll look forward to that, and I'm sure that you will find you have a lot of support in the community. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Sinclair. So the new building, and I'll preface my remarks by saying that I have attended the food sorting opportunities at least once a month and at your current location. So I'm assuming the new facility will have a lot more space for that activity to happen?
Yes and no. So we've been working with an industrial design firm in Vancouver, actually looking at our system processes. And one of the misnomers is that if you get more space, you will be more productive. And what we're actually doing is using about the same size space, but having it configured properly so that you can flow food through quicker. The big advantage that the new facility will give to us is there will be more room to store, and the individual sorting stations will not need to be set up and taken down. There will be a specific area to do dairy. There will be a specific area to do meat. There'll be a specific area to do produce. And so there's efficiencies gained there. One of the things, as we've spoken to our volunteers, is they're like, oh, good, we're going to have vast amount of space. And it's like, well, no, you're going to have the tools you need around you, and you will be able to work. So yes, more space. No, when you're sorting, which I hope you continue for the months and years ahead, it'll still be a relatively small space that each individual volunteer is working in.
Yeah, I guess part of the question I didn't mention was that given their COVID situations, the numbers that it can be on site is minimal compared to what it used to be. But I don't know how that productivity compares with pre-COVID to the amount of food that
Yeah, so what's been really interesting with that is because we've reduced the number of people that have actually been doing the sorting, we've been forced to be more innovative in how we actually do that process. And we've been able to get the same amount of produce sorting done with 2 people where historically we had 4 people doing it.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman,
No further questions?
you want to, well, no questions, but I, if I may, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Sinclair and all of those who work with Loaves and Fishes. The older part of me remembers a Canada without food banks, and so your success, on one hand, has to be admired. It is an amazing example to communities what you can achieve, and I'm setting aside the most important aspect of this, which is feeding people who would otherwise go hungry. In a world where so much of what we produce is in fact wasted, this is a wonderful example of how you can play a better role as a community in the food chain, ensuring that it doesn't go to waste. The environmental impact is significant and important, and compliments to all of you and to your leadership. Obviously, I'm not going to suggest for a moment that this is going to pass easily tonight, of course, but that would be presupposing how council would vote. Having said that, success should be rewarded, and on one level I wish you much success, but I'm hopeful that maybe at the end of the 30-year lease, this country will in fact have a system of distribution of food and resources in such a way that the necessity for food banks won't exist. But in the meantime, while we have it, nobody does a better job, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martman, you wish to move the motion?
I would be pleased to move the motion as recommended.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe.
If I may speak to it.
You certainly may.
I have been working on putting the food bank out of business for many, many years. It was actually 40 years ago where I actually used a food bank when I was a single mom and 2 young kids. And there was no dignity at that time in using a food bank. It was a very unpleasant and embarrassing and shameful experience. It should not be. And I am so proud of the Loaves and Fishes, and having worked with social planning with the city throughout the years and seeing where Loaves and Fishes distributes at different depots throughout the city. So there isn't just one location. Where people pre-COVID could go in and actually almost like a grocery store shop, where you could choose your meats, you can choose your dairies, you can choose your groceries. This is incredibly important. I'm very sad that at this time and in our society and in our country that people are going hungry, but they are. And these people are seniors and they're young families with children. And whatever we can do as a city that helps to improve that is an investment in our people and our city. So it gives me great honor to be able to move this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship, through you to staff. So I'm looking at the term of 30 years, and then the next line item is rent, and it says $10 for the term. Is that per year, or is that a typo, or just?
No, your worship, through Councillor Turley, that is correct. So that's the consideration to affect the lease to make it a legally binding document. So it's essentially a nominal rent for the 30 years.
Okay, and then farther down, it refers to property taxes. Leasing will be responsible for property taxes unless approved for progressive tax exemption, and that would be just on the improvements on the property.
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, it would actually be on both. So once the city acquires the property, there would be no tax on it, but when we transfer a lease to somebody, then that leased land is taxable.
Okay.
When Loaves and Fishes puts a building on it, the improvements are then taxable. So like you have with other nonprofits in the community, they'll apply for a PTE, and that'll be presented to you for your consideration. Thank you.
The motion having been moved, seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Any contrary? What a surprise, unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Sinclair, and Merry Christmas. The next is item C, appointment of bylaw enforcement officer. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Worship. We're seeking council's support this evening with appointing Kevin Kirk as a bylaw enforcement officer. Kevin Kirk works as an employee for our contractor, who's the Nanaimo Animal Control Limited, who provide animal control services within the city. And through this appointment, it would give Mr. Kirk the ability to enforce the animal responsibility bylaw. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any. Councillor Hemmens moves the motion appointing Mr. Kirk. We have a seconder in Councillor Thorpe. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is development variance permit application number DVP 429-108 Hawk Point Road. And Mr. Holm or Mr. Lindsay?
Oh, Mr. Worship, sorry, Your Worship, I was just going to say the next 6 items are development related, so all 6 items Mr. Holm can introduce.
Deferring your star status to Mr. Holm and earlier Mr. Groot to Mr. Lindsay. It's very gracious of you on Christmas. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Council. Good evening. This application, if we could pull up the context map attachment B to the report, that would be helpful. Is for a property at 108 Hawk Point Road, and it's a minor height variance. You can see the property outlined overhead. And if you could pull up attachment E to show the building elevations, it's really a very minor 0.14 meter or 14 centimeter height variance for a single family dwelling that's currently nearing completion of construction. This minor height variance is not anticipated to impact any views. Staff support the request for the variance that was required as a result of a construction error, and approval of the variance is supportable and not anticipated to impact any views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here that council would like to hear from or wishing to speak with respect to DVP 429-108 Hawk Point Road? No one wishes to say anything? All right, Councillor Hemmens.
I would make the recommended motion. Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. I would move that council issue development variance permit number DVP 429 at 108 Hawk Point Road with a variance to increase the maximum permitted height of a principal building with a roof pitch equal to or greater than 4 to 12 from 4.12? From 9 to 9.14 meters.
Thank you very much. There's a seconder. Councillor Bonner. Do you wish to speak to this?
I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of this, the job that I've taken on as councillor, and I get to raise this person's roof 3.5 inches.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Gesson. Oh, good. We're all not going to dogpile on. Excellent. All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. I think you've made some family happy this Christmas. The next is development permit application number DP 1224-5605 Cougar Ridge Place. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if we could bring up attachment B, the context map overhead, just to identify the property location, that would be helpful. Thank you. This property is in the same neighborhood actually as the previous application. This is a development permit. Actually, it's a renewal of a development permit previously issued in February 2018 by council at that time. And if you could bring up the site plan, attachment D, that would be helpful just to show what the development looks like. It's reflective of 3 single-family dwellings on the property. It's within it's R10 zone, so that's steep slope zone. which allows multiple dwelling units on the parcel. The proposal is consistent with the applicable development permit area guidelines. And if you could please bring up the building elevations, attachment E. The request, and the next slide, I believe, please. You'll see the request for height variance is built into the development permit. The height variance request is 0.25 meters for unit 1, shown there. Next slide, and again, please, next slide, and 0.89 meters for unit 2. And then you can see that there, and then next slide, and again, next slide, and 1.7 meters for unit 3. You can see on the overhead there. The design is consistent with applicable development permit area guidelines. The request is supported by staff and was previously in 2018 supported by the Design Advisory Panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I'll make the recommended motion.
Seconded. Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is development permit application number DP 1226-421 Prideaux Street. Mr. Holm again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an infill multifamily project at, it's within the Old City neighborhood. What's proposed by Kenco Enterprises. If you could bring up the context map, please. It's 421 Prideaux. And what's proposed on the property is a 16 micro-unit apartment building. And if you could bring up the building elevations, attachment E, please, just to show what the proposal looks like. The proposal brings us a strong street presence in the design and design elements that and details that maintain the architectural style that's required in the Old City under the applicable design guidelines. The ground floor units include individual amenity areas. Vehicle access and parking are from the lane. And if you could bring up attachment G, the landscape plan and details, it'll show you the relationship with the, it'll show you the site planning for the development there. So vehicle access and parking are from the lane. A number of minor variances are requested, including a 0.9 meter height variance, 0.87 meter front yard variance to allow for a trellis, 1.1 meter and 0.85 meter side yard variances to allow balconies which support, enhance articulation and provide private space for residents, private outdoor space for residents as well, landscape buffer variance and small car variance from 40% small cars to 50% small cars are requested. The proposal or the development as proposed is supported by the Design Advisory Panel, is consistent with the applicable development permit area guidelines, and staff support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I call on Councillor Hemmens for the recommended motion, I want to offer my compliments to the design panel. That's usually Councillor Brown's purview, who's with us tonight, as well as Councillor Armstrong via Zoom. I think this is a particularly impressive approach to adding community and densification. It's a very attractive building. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I'll make the recommended motion.
Seconded. Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is rezoning application number RA 453-6033 and 6053 Nelson Road. Mr. Lindsay, pardon me, Mr. Holm again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application, I'll do a brief introduction. I know we have a presentation from the applicant, and the applicant will cover much of the details that are proposed. This is McDonald Gray Consultants, are the applicant, and the proposal, if you could bring up the context map, please, attachment A. Just identify the location of the property is on Nelson Road. It's 2 properties. Currently, the proposal is to rezone from R1 to R6, or sorry, R1 and R6 to R6 and R8, with a site-specific height of 22.5 meters, where 50% of the parking is provided beneath the building. The applicant will touch on many of the details and the concept as proposed. So I won't touch on that any further, but happy to take questions if council has any later on. The proposal includes a number of items that are recommended to be secured as a condition of rezoning, including road and park dedication, including a subdivision requirement and title binding covenant on the two parcels as they exist, and security of a pedestrian covenant and statutory right-of-way, which the applicant will speak to the purpose and the connections that are being identified to be secured there, as well as a community amenity contribution, which is proposed as $1,000 per unit. That would be based on the concept currently put forward would be $160,000. That's based on the current concept, but the community amenity contribution would be collected at this time of building permit, so it would depend on the exact makeup of the proposal at that time. The request is that 20% be directed towards bus shelter or active transportation improvements, 40% towards the city's housing legacy reserve, and 40% towards parks and trail improvements in the area. Staff support the proposal as presented, and as I mentioned, the applicant will present a great deal of information. I'm happy to take questions at any time if council should choose to.
Thank you very much. Question from Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. This has generated quite a bit of discussion in the north end again, as well as because of the Bowers one as well. What is the total number of units that are going to be going in?
Through your worship, the concept is proposing about 160 units.
And the traffic plan, is that going to be revamped now that the Bowers is going in? Because that's going to also have an impact. So there was concern, and I'm just raising questions that were sent to me about the traffic impact, especially on Nelson Road, which is already impossible in the morning.
Through your worship, yeah, there was a traffic impact assessment prepared for the concept as put forward that supported the proposal with the would-be improvements, obviously, to Nelson Road fronting the property, as well. There are improvements to the active transportation network that are proposed as part of the development that would be secured should council support the rezoning through to adoption. Generally traffic impact assessments would take in to account major developments under review, and the road network in the area. The traffic impact assessment submitted with this application identified that the road network in place supports the traffic that would be anticipated to be generated by the development.
Just to follow up to that though, but did it take into account the new Bowers development, which is expected to bring in between 3,000 and 4,000 new vehicles?
Through your worship, I don't have the traffic impact assessment at hand, but we will have that available on our website, and I can review that in detail later. So I can't confirm if it did. Given the timing of this application relative to Bowers, I can check on that though.
And the other follow-up question was, again, both the two catchment schools, Randerson and McGirr, are both over capacity now. So is the school district actively involved in this to looking at where new students can go?
Yes, through your worship. So this application is consistent with the official community plan policy for the property, which the school district is involved in providing input into. And again, the school district's involved through Reimagine that sets the future land use direction for the community at that level. As well, the application is referred to the school district. The rezoning application is referred to the school district. So yes, they are aware of the proposal, and they do provide input through the community planning process to the city.
So they had no concerns then?
They did not specifically raise the issue of, to my knowledge, of school capacity issues. And they would, through the community planning process, and they have, as council's aware, through presentations from the school district, they have identified the need for land acquisition and expansion in certain areas. The school district does take their growth, anticipated growth information from work that the city has done towards the implementation of and land needs analysis through Reimagine Nanaimo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing no further questions at this point for staff. Is Nigel Gray here? Mr. Gray, if you can introduce yourself, give us your address, and you'll have 5 minutes, and at 1 minute I'll give you the signal. It won't mean I'm going to talk to someone in Victoria for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation which should go and talk on its own, so I'm going to leave that and stop speaking moistly for a second. And if you have any questions after, I will take them. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nigel Gray. I'm a planner and project manager with McDonald Gray Consultants. I appreciate the opportunity tonight to give you a brief overview of our zoning amendment application for 6053 and 6033 Nelson Road. The intent of this application is to change the zoning of the properties in order to facilitate future development that is aligned with the vision of the city's official community plan. Insight Holdings continues to support the logical and pragmatic evolution of our neighborhoods, the land use proposals that are clearly aligned with the goals, objectives, and policies of the community. Slides just to give you a little context about the location of the site and some of the influences in terms of land use on the property. So here we are, essentially a short walk away from Longwood Station, directly adjacent to the Randerson Ridge Elementary School. We have Molesey Creek, which is flowing along the southern boundary of the properties into the wetland feature, which lies at the end of Lindley Valley Road. The property fronts on both Nelson and Lindley Valley Drive. This excerpt from the City of Nanaimo online mapping shows the transition between neighborhood and corridor, and you can see that it's logically building out from the commercial center located at Longwood Station, and gradually that density is going to transition back into the low density neighborhoods north of Nelson Road. What is a proof of concept? It's a term that we use quite a bit, and the intent here is that we've created a land use concept that is generated from the professional reporting that we've undertaken to date. It's to ensure we can physically accommodate the land uses we're proposing on the land, and it's also used for our servicing calculations and for our traffic impact analysis and other items that are applicable at this stage of a land use discussion. It's important, and we're always very clear and transparent to tell people and councils that the actual site design and building configurations will change. This is just the rezoning stage, so we're just talking about land use and proving that we can get it on the property right now. More detailed reporting and more detailed design will occur in future development phases. That would be during development permit application, and should there be a future subdivision, it would occur at that time as well. So we just want to be very careful to explain that these are visualizations of the possible effect of the land use, and this is not the penultimate design for the properties. First piece of our proof of concept is addressing land dedications. In this case, we are proposing a 0.43 hectare, essentially 1 acre park dedication. Beyond that, there has been a request to widen Nelson Road, so there will be a 2.5 meter section along the Nelson frontage that will be dedicated, and that's to accommodate the city's new standard for integrated roadway design, including bike lanes and pedestrian paths. There's an existing trail statutory right-of-way that follows Molesey Creek. Through this application, we will also be expanding that system to connect Lindley Valley to Nelson Road, as well as points to the east. A portion of the properties is currently zoned R6 for townhomes, and that lies along Nelson Road. We are proposing to extend the R6 zoning along Nelson Road between the existing R6 and the school site. It just appears to be a logical extension, and it's in keeping with the OCP density targets. The proposed R8 zoning portion of the two properties is tucked down the hill from Nelson Road, and as we mentioned in previous slides, the topography breaks pretty quickly, and these buildings would be nestled into the slope, tucked in between Molesey Creek and that slope in the rear. The proposed density here is 86 units per hectare, which is well within the OCP targets. And what we have here in this building configuration is illustrating a 140 unit scenario. Part of the reason we do a proof of concept piece when it comes to a zoning amendment is to see if we can fit the uses on the property effectively. And in this case, with the land use dedications we're proposing and the topography of the site, 6-story height allowance is necessary to accommodate the desired density. In this case, we've confirmed with the architectural consultants that 22.5 meters is necessary for height to allow the density we are proposing, and that is essentially a 6-story configuration. Although in this scenario, the bottom two stories would actually be tucked in front of underground parking. We'll show you a section of that in a second. The 6-story height is in keeping with OCP policies and the corridor land use designation. And just note that following architectural vignettes will show how that land use scenario responds to the topography and our environmental constraints on this site. As you can see in the vignette below, this is a section through the site, Nelson Road being on the left and Lindley Valley Drive to the right. The dashed red line shows basically the zoning boundary that we're proposing on the site. This follows the OCP corridor and neighborhood designations. But the grade break is pretty dramatic in that it allows you to tuck a 6-story building at the bottom of the hill, which would essentially be lower than the proposed townhomes up towards Nelson. So you can see how we've kind of tried to stitch this onto the site, and the architects have done a really great job of kind of making this nestle into the topography we have. And you can see there that the 6-story 22.5 meter height allowance is absolutely appropriate given the adjacencies to the Mollassy Creek Trailway and that upper slope condition.
Presentation, so to speak, this electronic, but
thank you again to Mayor and Council for your time and consideration of this zoning amendment application.
Welcome to the brave new world. I'm talking to a machine.
There's no way I could have done that in 5 minutes anyway, so it was kind of perfect.
Ha! You admit to cheating.
You
Just
never know with
teasing.
COVID. I didn't know whether I'd be able to present in person or not. So,
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, Councillor Hemmens?
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.196 to rezone 6033 and 6053 Nelson Road from single dwelling residential R1, duplex residential R4, low density residential R6, and parks, recreation and culture 1 PRC1 to low density residential R6 and medium density residential R8 and parks and recreation culture PRC-1 to allow for a multifamily residential development. Pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, motion carries. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.196 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any contrary? None, motion carries. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that council direct staff to secure park and road dedication, subdivision covenant, and preliminary layout approval, pedestrian covenant, and statutory right-of-way, and the monetary community amenity contributions should council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Gray. The next is rezoning application, and Merry Christmas. The next is rezoning application number RA 474-6201 Blueback Road. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. This proposal, actually, if you could bring the attachment A context map on the screen overhead, that would be helpful. This is for property at 6201 Blueback Road. There it is outlined above. This is an application from Van Land Use on behalf of 7-Eleven Canada Limited. The proposal is for a site-specific rezoning to allow for a liquor store on the subject property, which is the site of an existing commercial plaza. And if you can bring up attachment C, the site plan, it'll show you the unit that the liquor store is proposed to go in there. The property is located on the corner of Dover, Uplands, and Blueback, and for these rezoning applications, the city has a set of liquor store, private liquor store, or LRS as they're known, rezoning criteria that are applied to applications to determine whether or not the application is appropriate or supportable for the site. In this case, the proposal is consistent with the liquor store rezoning criteria, which identify the fit of the proposal within the context and also consider proximity of sensitive land uses such as schools to the proposed location. As far as the council's liquor store rezoning criteria, the proposal is supportable as it's been put forward. The proposal includes a community amenity contribution of $10,000 that are suggested to be directed to the Housing Legacy Fund, 40% to the Housing Legacy Fund, and 60% towards parks improvements in the area. Staff support the proposal as presented. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. I'm not seeing any. Councillor Thorpe was quicker. I just looked over and he beat you to it.
Thank you,
And
Your
Councillor
Worship.
Martin.
Yes, I have had questions from the local community regarding this, and I know the answer from reading the report, but viewers may not. There was some concern that this proposal might be replacing, excuse me, the 7-Eleven store, but it's not. We're talking about the winemaking business, which is adjacent to the 7-Eleven.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. It's the retail unit that was occupied by the winemaking store and not the 7-Eleven.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hardening the wine into liquor. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I'm just curious, in the petition, they called it a specialty beer and wine store, but it's actually going to be a liquor store, or which one is it?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Martman. The terminology that the province used is a licensee retail store. That's a private liquor store. Specialty beer and wine is more of a dated term, but it's essentially a private liquor store.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.195 to amend the local service center CC1 zone to allow a liquor store as a site-specific use at 6201 Blueback Road, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.195 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And I move that council direct staff to secure the community amenity contribution prior to adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.195 should council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is rezoning application number R800471-2393 Barclay Road. Mr. Holm, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This property, if you could bring up the context map, please, attachment A to the report, is on Barclay Crescent near Labio Road. You can see it highlighted there. The proposal is to rezone from R1 to R2, which is a small lot residential zone. This proposal is very similar to two previous proposals considered by council approved by council in 2019 for 2397 and 2387 Barclay, which is to support rezoning to a small lot zone to support infill subdivision, which in this case is consistent with the, if you could bring up the proposed subdivision plan attachment C, please. The proposal is consistent with the city's small lot rezoning policy. So essentially rezoning to a small lot to allow a two-lot subdivision. And there's a set of policy that is applied through the official community plan. This proposal is consistent with the policy in the official community plan for rezoning to small lot. The proposal, if supported by council through to adoption, staff would recommend securing a couple of items through rezoning. That would include a community amenity contribution of $2,000 towards park and trail improvements in the area, as well as a building design covenant to ensure that the development on the property is consistent with the city's small lot rezoning policy. Staff support the proposal as presented, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.197 to rezone 2393 Barclay Road from single dwelling residential R1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.197 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that council direct staff to secure the community amenity contribution and a covenant for general building design should council support the bylaw at third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the school site acquisition charge bylaw. Mr. Holm or Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll give Mr. Holm a break on this one.
One is coming back to you.
Your Worship, Council's likely familiar with this file. We've been in front of you a couple times in the last couple of months, both at a GPC and most recently on November 15th, updating you regarding the school board's intent to proceed with a school acquisition charge, which will apply to development within the community. There is one part of the legislation that requires that if it is intended to apply to 2 and 3 unit developments, it actually requires a bylaw to be approved by the city. So it's an odd little loophole, so to say, in the provincial legislation. So we are directed on the 15th to prepare a bylaw to essentially close that loophole, and we're introducing that or proposing to introduce that bylaw for the first 3 readings this evening. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I would move that school site acquisition charge bylaw 2021 number 7338 to require the payment of school site acquisition charges on developments of 2 and 3 residential units pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I would move that school site acquisition charge bylaw 2021 number 7338 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I would move that school site acquisition charge bylaw 2021 number 7338 pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item K, Regional Growth Strategy Minor Amendment -1329, 1333, and 1340 Kip Road. Mr. Holm. Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Simply seeking Council's direction this evening with respect to a referral from the Regional District of Nanaimo for a proposed RGS amendment. This is considered to be a minor amendment, so as a result, the recommendations from the member municipalities are referred back to the board, and the ultimate decision is made by the board for these minor amendments. So in this case, it's for a minor amendment to allow for the expansion of an existing industrial use on Kip Road, which is just south of the city's boundaries. Staff are recommending council support the proposed amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I'll move the recommended motion.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Parks and Trails Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1231.08 to 2021. And Ms. Mercer.
Sorry, Your Worship, she's used to me taking much longer, so I assume she's...
Nothing wrong with being a stage hog. Reminds you of a dreadful story I'll tell you sometime. Ms. Mercer, welcome. You'll be introducing this?
I was expecting to be much later. So historically, the RDN has collected funding for their regional parks and trails through a parks levy, as well as a parcel tax. So the parks levy was used to fund their annual costs and operations and maintenance, and it is apportioned among participating areas based on their population of the participating area. And the parcel tax was used to fund acquisitions and capital development, and was apportioned on the basis of the number of taxable parcels within the participating area. So in 2021, the parcel tax was $20 per parcel for Nanaimo. So for 2022, the RDN is proposing that they change how they calculate and collect for the parks and trails. So the parks levy for the annual costs is proposed to be apportioned based on a 50-50 split of the population and assessed value, rather than just population. So the cost for acquisitions and capital development would be apportioned based on that same 50-50 split of population and assessment rather than a flat parcel tax. So based on the 2021 assessment values and the information provided in the RDN's report, the average household would pay about $6 less based on this new calculation. So in order for these changes to take place, the RDN requires consent of at least 2/3 of the local service participants prior to the adoption by the RDN board. So the RDN is asking that the city consent to this new calculation method. So that's what the report is about.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I'll make the recommended motion.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Mercer. Your time in the sun is done. I'm just kidding. Your time in the long list of bylaws is about to begin. Financial Plan Bylaw 2021, number 7337. Councillor Hemmens, please.
Thank you. I would move that Financial Plan Bylaw 2021, number 7337, to confirm and adopt the 2022 to 2026 financial plan be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Your worship, sorry. There is Councillor Bonner is opposed.
Councillor Bonner is opposed.
I mean,
No,
sorry, Councillor Brown.
Brown.
Apologize.
Please.
Apologize.
For the record,
Councillor Bonner.
Councillor Brown is opposed.
Apologies to both of you, sorry.
The next is Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 2496.34. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 2496.34, to set the 2022 rates for sanitary sewer be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? Sorry, Councillors Armstrong and Brown, are you opposed or in favor? In favor.
I marked them as in favor, your worship, yeah.
Thank you, all right. Next is Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7004.17. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7004.17, to set the 2022 water rates be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is User Fee Subsidies Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7095.03. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that User Fee Subsidies Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7095.03, to set the 2022 thresholds for user fee subsidies be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7099.10. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7099.10, to set the 2022 bulk water rates for Southwest Extension be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. F, Municipal Solid Waste Bylaw Collection Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7128.13. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I would move that Municipal Solid Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7128.13, to update the bylaw for solid waste collection and set the rates for 2022 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. G, Brecken Boat Ramp Facilities Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7110.01.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmens.
I move that Brecken Boat Ramp Facilities Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7110.01, to remove the fine and fee schedules and update the violation and penalty language be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And the next is Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7159.15.
Thank you. I move that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7159.15, to add the fine schedule associated with the Brecken Boat Ramp Facilities Regulation Bylaw be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And finally, Fees and Charges Bylaw 2021, number 7336. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Fees and Charges Bylaw 2021, number 7336, to replace the fee schedule and add the Brecken Boat Ramp commercial permit fees be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Ms. Gurry, we have no notice of motion tonight, but we do have another business item, and that is the request from Councillor Thorpe, Local Government Leadership Academy training. Back to school.
Yes, Your Worship, just quickly, under the council spending and amenities policy, a motion is required for any member of council to attend any training or conference that is out of town that is not the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, UBCM, Union of British Columbia Municipalities, or Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC conventions. So anything outside of those three things requires a resolution from council, which is why this is before you this evening.
Councillor Bonner?
Second.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe, did you want to?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to apologize to Council for bringing this in as a late item. I just became aware of this training opportunity and wanted to get approval tonight before we take the Christmas break. The Local Government Leadership Training Academy, I think, is an excellent organization, and they did not have a conference, I believe, in 2019. Last year's, I believe, was virtual, and they're hoping to have an in-person workshop in Richmond in the middle of February, which I would appreciate being able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your interest in taking further training. It's been moved by Councillor Bonner, seconded by Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Question period. I'm going to assume that we have nobody. Before I accept the motion for adjournment, I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to staff for attending this evening and continue your work on behalf of the city. If there's anything anyone wants to say as the last council meeting of the year, please do so. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to also thank you and the rest of the council and staff too for all the work that they've done over the last year. It's been a tough year on many fronts, so I appreciate the work that everyone has done. I also appreciate the work of myself being able to do this work. I think it's an honor, and I look forward to being able to participate in doing this next year. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish all of our citizens a very merry holiday and season's greetings to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well said. Seeing no one else, I'll wish you all Merry Christmas, and we'll accept Councillor Martman's motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. What a surprise. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.